Well, I'm standing here in Morpeth on the Hunter River near Maitland, Newcastle, and I want to tell you one of those invisible stories that I keep talking about that are lost in Australia. And I believe the footsteps of Jesus are all over this country. And this biscuit here is the reason I'm here. In our motel, there it is, the Arnott's biscuit. It's a great story, and it begins not here in Morpeth, but it begins in Scotland. In the 1830s, the Industrial Revolution was pushing people into the cities. There was a little family, the Arnott family, living down on the seashore, dyeing cloth in pretty tough circumstances. The father of the family, David Arnott, made a mistake. He sold some goods that were trusted to him to try and pay debts and keep his family alive. He was sentenced to imprisonment in the hulks down in the Thames in London, and eventually was sent away to Australia transported as a convict. David Arnott had to leave his family behind, his 6 children, his wife, and was sent halfway around the world. Can you imagine that, being ripped apart like that? But that's what was happening, and it seemed like there was no way the family could get together again. However, a guardian angel stepped in with the name Carolyn Chisholm. And here in Australia, she talked to David Arnott and others about what had happened to them, and their families were separated. She said, I can do something about that. So she set about bringing the families back together, not only just his, but many others. But she did succeed, not once, not twice, but 3 times in bringing the whole family together. First, the wife and children, half the children anyway, left William and David behind in Scotland. Then a little later she got those 2 boys, or young men, shipped to Australia, and on the way to Australia William met his wife-to-be, Margaret, and they came and settled in this area here. Now William tried his luck on the goldfields first of all down around Bathurst, didn't work, started doing a bit of baking there. That's what he learned in Scotland. Came back here, and with his brother David they began a bakery just up the street here, a couple of houses up there. You can see that the floodplain stretching out behind us here, that Morpeth was very flood prone, and so William found his business, even though it was thriving, 3 times his business was flooded out and he lost everything. And in the middle of that his wife died, so he was left with 6 kids, bankrupt, in debt. But he was a very resilient man. I think his faith gave him strength, and so he got up again, moved himself to Newcastle, which was becoming the major port. Morpeth was shrinking, Newcastle was expanding, and he began the steam biscuit factory there, which became the famous Arnott's brand, which spread its biscuits all over the world eventually, because for the ships that came here were looking for hardtack biscuits that they could transport and would stay fresh, relatively fresh anyway, on their long trips. So he was a resilient businessman, but not only that, he was a man of faith. I'm at the Wesleyan Methodist Church here in Maitland. Historians say that John Wesley changed the face of England during the 1800s. Revolution was in the air, and he probably averted something as bloody as the French Revolution. The Methodists, as they were known, carried that practical kind of Christianity across the world. William Arnott, worshipping at this Wesleyan Methodist Church here in Maitland, was that kind of man. Perhaps this pillar here even comes from the church where he worshipped. He began Sunday schools. For 25 years he ran Sunday schools all through the Maitland, Newcastle area, because he loved children. And he wanted the gospel of Jesus to be strong in their lives. And here he is, a CEO of a big company, giving himself to children. I think that's remarkable. This cottage was taken over by Carolyn Chisholm, the famous immigrant's friend, as she was known, who worked tirelessly for particularly convict families who were being sent to Australia, sometimes, like the Arnotts, divided from their children or from their wives. And she worked hard to get the Arnott family here. She put herself out to bring the family together. Quite a remarkable story. And this place here was where probably the family may have stayed here on their first part of their journey here to Australia, and that's part of the Arnott story. I'm sitting on the wharf here at Newcastle. Just further up the Hunter River there was Morpeth. It's hard to believe that Morpeth was the main port in the early days and Newcastle was the secondary port, but now obviously it boomed. The Arnotts moved down here after the disasters of the three floods, set up here in Hunter Street, just over there. And the next 20 years or so absolutely boomed as the biscuit manufacturer for Australia. William was active in the churches down here as well as up in Maitland, and he was prodigious in helping churches spread through the area, and he was passionate about not only just Sunday schools but helping people in every way possible, and so he became a great giver to churches and to charitable things. Part of that story actually intersects with my family story. Just behind us here, the Stockton ferry comes across from the other side to Newcastle, and my great-grandmother, Ma Dalby, she was known as, for 50 years, she was active in the Benevolent Society alongside Margaret Arnott, who was William's wife, and together with a team of women, they basically were doing what the government had not organised itself to do. There was no safety net for people who were sick, who were old, who were infirm, who were poverty-stricken. And for 40, 50 years, those women, that team of women carried the needs of people in Newcastle. And William Arnott and his wife were prodigious givers to those charities. One of the stories that really amazed me about William Arnott was this. Back up there in Morpeth, he left big debts behind. After 20 years, he went back and he found the creditors, and he paid back those debts after 20 years. They were so astonished that they put on a community function for him and presented him with a medal that said labour and honour. And it says that here's a man who worked hard, but he had a great heart for people. In his industry, in the Arnott's factory, he would carry injured workers, sick workers. In the days when there's nothing like that, he looked after them. And he tried to give good pay, and he expected he would work hard, that they would work hard. And he carried that out of his Christian conviction that that's what a Christian should do, not just make wealth for himself, but make wealth so that he could bless a city like this. And so I love that story, because the Arnott's biscuit, when you bite into a Tim Tam or a Sayo or whatever, it's good to remember the story of a man and a woman of faith who made an impact on a whole city, like my grandmother coming across here to join them. How amazing is that? And so when you hear the name William Arnott, think of a man of faith, a man of courage, a man of vision, heart for children, heart for the gospel of Jesus, who made a difference in this country. He's one of those men who left the footprints of Jesus on this city, William Arnott.